One. Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to another holiday episode of ArmTalk. I'm your host, Jody Williams, and hope everybody had a good Thanksgiving yesterday. Today, I have Mr. Paul Passmore on the show. Paul, how you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm doing amazing. I had a great Thanksgiving. Been getting a lot of rest, a lot of great things going on. Everything's going wonderful in my life.
Well, good. Reason why I want to bring you on the show is because I want to go back and talk about the PAF championship that took place. Was it last weekend or weekend before last?
It was weekend before last.
Okay. Take us back and let us know, because didn't you have a match with Carl Stanley?
I did. I was expecting a war, and I absolutely got one. What was fun about the match is me and Carl have a lot of history.
Yes.
When I was coming up, Carl was a big target of mine. Everybody has a target person. They like, man, I'd love to be good enough to beat that guy one day. You pull them in a tournament and they just smash you when you're coming up. You're like, maybe one day if I keep training, I can beat that guy.
Right.
Carl was. There's quite a few of them for me, and Carl was definitely one. I studied him, kept watching every video that I could find on him, wins, losses. I was trying to pick apart any weakness I could find. Carl's a definite solid puller everywhere. He's big, he's strong, he's fast, he's smart. And, I knew that if I could get to the point where I could bang with him or beat him, that I would be at a really high level. So he was always someone to begin with. And, the really cool thing about it is one of my first pro tournaments, I met him, and I was nobody, and he had a big name already, and he was extremely cool to me, And so me and him have always got along good. And so I remember him from day one. He's just a really good dude, And so, but just the competitiveness in me, I definitely wanted to surpass him skill-wise. So anyway, I studied him, and I believe at the Worley Classic, the first one he ever did in Florida, me and him met in the tournament, and I got a win on him, and I just thought that was amazing. And then me and him met a few times, and, he beat me since then. I beat him since then. We went back and forth and developed a good rivalry and a very good friendship over the years, too. We just both lived in the Southeast, and we're two of the better guys down here. And we've met up at the top of the tournament brackets quite a few times, and we ended up pulling for a left arm national championship. About 2 years or 3 years ago. And so we met for the left arm national championship, PAF 2019, I believe. And so we had a good war there. And so I'd figured out a lot of things about Carl. And there was a little short time period there where I kind of felt like I had his number. And I've been watching him, and he looks to be improving. So I was expecting a different version of Carl. Just what I saw was Carl had expanded what he does a little bit and gotten better at the things he did good. So, and he looked like he'd gotten stronger. And, me and him both work hard. So I've improved and he improved, and I knew it was going to be a match. And we try to stay out of each other's way to a point. I want to see him do good, and I think he probably feels the same way. So we avoid each other because of our friendship. I don't want to trip him up on his path to success and vice versa. But this PAF belt thing kind of put us in each other's way. We got everybody else out of the way left-handed that was part of it in the whole country. And It just ended up being me and him, like the Highlander movie. There can only be one.
Now, you made an interesting point, because you just sat there and what caught my ear right a second ago is when you said, because you're good friends and, you respect one another on and off the table. And you said that, okay, I don't want to get in his way. He doesn't want to get in my way. So you guys don't kind of interrupt you guys' progress. So tell everybody out there exactly what do you mean by that? Because we've all heard the Chance Shaw thing where, hey, I don't want to pull Derek Smith or Corey West because I want to make sure all of us are at the top of the mountain before we start going at each other. But there are certain situations where that can happen. It almost did at Arm Wars reality check, but Derek and Chance could not make it, so that never happened. So tell everybody out there, what do you mean by, like, you don't want to disturb each other's progress?
Well, I want to see Carl do good, and Carl was a killer. So, I don't want to do anything to stop his progress. But when you both climb to the very top of the mountain and there's just no more room, you have to meet each other. But until there's no more room, we try to avoid each other. This situation, there really was no more room. It's just like me and Ron. We're both similar weights and we're on the same team, and we avoid each other the best we can in tournaments too. I'll never call him out for a super match, and ever, because he's one of my mentors and stuff, and vice versa. We got a great like family like friendship and stuff. So I feel like if you try to go after friends too early, you can really trip them up on their way to the top. And hey, why not? If you can't, just let them meet you at the top if that's possible. I don't mind pulling anybody, because at the end of the day, it's just an athletic competition, right? It's just if we're playing Madden football against each other, it's fun. One of us is going to win. They'll talk a little trash, and that's about it.
Yeah.
But, I would rather meet Carl where I met him at the top of the mountain than one of us knock each other off before we got there.
Well, it's kind of like, if you guys are at a tournament and say Alabama State, we'll get to that in a second, where, hey, we're in the same weight class, you're almost to a point. I'd rather pull Carl in the finals rather than pull him in the second round. You know what I mean? It kind of, because a lot of it depends on the brackets too. We all know, sometimes on a day, the brackets could be in your favor or it can go against you. We all know that. The longer you pull in the sport, the more you'll experience things like that. Yes.
Absolutely. I believe in doing a little bit of educated seeding on brackets, putting probably the number one and, the number one, number two guys on opposite ends of the bracket if you can.
Mm-hmm.
That way they don't meet until late in the tournament. If possible, the way we do it, it's double elimination, so there's really no way of them not meeting before. But, try to seed the tournaments to where the stronger guys are on opposite ends the best you can.
Yeah, I mean, it only makes sense because, and even then, if you do that, there's no guarantees that the number one seed and the 2 seed is going to meet in the finals, because you throw in some other people in there. It can, let's just say Jerome Lau want to pull up, or, Craig Sue Blair. Now, that could throw a monkey wrench. Not saying, it's not going to be easy, but it's like, oh, okay. And then it's like, well, that's why it looks good on paper, but at the same time, you still got to, you got to perform, at a high level.
Yeah, and I think the nature of this sport is a little bit different than other sports. I've competed in other sports, and the nature of this sport is a little bit more of a friendly, fraternal brothership among almost everybody.
Oh, yeah.
We all get along pretty good. And, the longer you stay in it, the more friends you make. And it kind of, it's a different mentality, really, when you're meeting up on the table with somebody that you genuinely like, or versus somebody that you don't know or dislike, I'll, for some reason, I always find myself referencing MMA, but that's a different mindset. When you're about to fight somebody, you're never really friendly. You generally don't know each other, and there's usually a lot of rivalry, and you end up kind of dehumanizing your opponent and all that type of stuff, and you got a lot of, ill will towards them going into that match where, and that can happen some in arm wrestling. I know me and Corey West, for example, that was one match when we met in Wall 505. There was a little bit of a ill will going into that match. I think I think the thing with me and Corey is we're both pretty similar in the fact we don't talk a lot of trash, and we're pretty similar and respectful. And when we get drug into that, our ability to keep it as a promotional kind of fun trash talking isn't that good, because both of us are kind of serious people. And we got pushed into kind of trying to – Wall wants you to promote and kind of push and do a little bit of trash talking and stuff, and it started out like that, and it got serious pretty quick.
You could still have that good rivalry without all the trash talking, and for WAL, and Carl Stanley's in the chat, by the way. He said Paul is a true warrior and a great friend, and I agree. Yeah. Wall tries to make it to where it's kind of WWE like, which is fine, and I'm okay with that, but only certain people fit that kind of what they're looking for. Because I'm gonna tell you right now, Dave Chafee, one of the most respected guys in the sport, his personality doesn't fit WAL, what they're trying to do now. When it was as tournament based, Dave wrecked everybody. But when they went to the Supermatch format and what they were trying to do, they were trying to create villains. So, before it was Travis was the villain. And then when they went to the Supermatch format, then you got Devin Larratt was like the top villain. Or they try to perceive him as a top villain. And Dave just, he just wasn't buying into that kind of. You could just tell body language wise they didn't fit him. He's more of a PAL guy. I just want to go grind with some of the best in Europe and go from there. He doesn't need all the theatrics, or so to speak. So there are some places where people are good at that, but there are other events where I'd rather just see two guys just go at it. And if you're an arm wrestling fan, you can look beneath all that. I understand that in super matches. Let's just go, PAL since we're talking about it. I get the fact that it gets boring with the setups. I get the fact that, any kind of bunny hop they're going to call it. But at the same time, hey, it makes you a strict puller, meaning that it makes you got to stay on your A game and P's and Q's, because if you get any kind of sloppiness, they're going to call it. So there is, some things that people abide by as far as that. I mean, do you agree or disagree?
Oh, I agree completely. I think that would be a good description of Carl and I both. We're both pretty serious athletes. We train very hard. We train like pro athletes. We make it compete at a high level, and neither one of us really talk a lot of trash. We just get it done on the table. It's all business. We got up there. We're good friends. We got up there on the match. It was all business, and it was a hell of a match. He brought some new things. I brought some new things, and it ended up getting extremely interesting. I didn't expect to run through him, and I'm sure he didn't expect to run through me, and it ended up being just a bloody battle. Both of us limped away from that one. Real competitive. He had definitely improved on the things he was good at and brought some new tricks. So it was pretty cool. It was definitely probably the highest level both of us have brought to the table. Either one of us has been extremely difficult to beat on that day. We both brought a really high level, trained, sharp version of ourselves to the table. And we both weighed in at 285. We had a discussion. We both, kind of tired of being that big. I think naturally our frames are somewhat similar. Carl's got a little larger frame than me, but pretty similar. I feel like we both kind of push ourselves pretty hard to be this big. We kind of maxed out our genetic potential at super heavyweight for just as big as we could possibly be. I don't think I could get 1 pound heavier or stronger than I am. And it's probably about the same way for him. We were pushing for everything we could, and that's about all we could bring. And, I think we're both pushing the limits of our health too. We had a discussion, and both of us are intending on cutting back down possibly to the definitely for me. If I understood him right, I think for him too, we're going to looking at going to the 242 class.
That is my next point, because, and before I asked to go into that, Carl says, if Robbie Toby wasn't dropping weight, we'd love to have seen Paul versus Robbie. With that being said, Paul, go after Cody. So first things first, Paul, I need to let you know, because Robbie Toby, right? So a good friend of mine is his teammate out in Idaho, and I have a match with Robbie Topi in June next year. So, and right now he is weighing about 235 right now, okay? So there's that, Carl. Now, here's the thing. You and I talked last week, or it might have been earlier this week, I think. And we talked about, things being changed, right? So look at it this way. You and I talked about, you know what? I think I've reached the ceiling as far as what you want to do. And now you're thinking about, dropping down a weight class because it prevents new rivalries. It prevents new people to chase Stafford. Tell everybody what your grand scheme of plan is for the year 2022.
My first plan of action is, I don't want to cut weight in a negative way and really lose a lot of strength. I've done it before where it came off pretty quick, and I've done it before where it was a little bit more of a struggle. But if the weight comes off correctly and quick and easy, with because I force feed myself to be this size,
right?
So you just going to eating normal and adding a little bit more cardio normally takes off, about enough weight for me to get to the 242-pound class over a couple months. So that's the plan. I would like to hit Alabama State at 242. I'm not going to kill myself to do it if it's getting to where it's just too much, because I don't want to emaciate myself. I've cut weight before in a way where I pushed it too hard and I lost too much strength when I cut the weight. I want to do it slow and healthy where I maintain strength. So my goal is to maintain strength and do a good, slow, healthy cut to 242 for Alabama, just with clean eating and more cardio.
Yeah.
And still keep my arm wrestling training at a high level, but maybe lay off of the, heavy benching, squatting, and deadlifting that I've been doing. And just keep my table work at a high level and keep my numbers up there to where all my functional arm wrestling strength will stay similar, and then try to get to 242. Because I pulled 242 as longer than I pulled heavyweight.
Right.
And at the time, it just wasn't a very well-respected class. There's a few annoying things about it. That seems to be the first class that they start playing with at every tournament. They'll say, hey, we're going to make it 240, or hey, we're going to make it 232, or we're just going to drop that weight class. And it got annoying. And then on top of that, I won the AAA Nationals both hands in Michigan.
Yeah.
Actually, 3 or 4 months before I won PAF finals at Supers. And that's the reason I went out there. I won the AAA Nationals, and I just got zero recognition for it. I was like, I just won a national championship with both arms, and nobody even said a word about it. So this class just completely unrespected. So I said, I'm just going to go to Supers and see what I can do. I'm going to put on some weight and, try PAF finals at Supers. And it went real well. Ended up winning. So,
well, I mean, there is something to be said.
Figured out what it was.
There's something to be said for that. I mean, I understand that all eyes are glued to the Supers. I get that, right? Because when you get to unless you're a diehard UFC fan, or there's a marquee name, you want to go to the heavyweights, super heavyweights. That's what you want to focus in on. But, I understand that because all the attention's on Devin and Michael and Jerry, and the list goes on. And, any weight class below that, unless you're in that particular weight class or you're a diehard fan, they don't get as much recognition. Totally get that. But, for me, and I'm in the same boat you are, come 2022, I am dropping down a weight class. So, for me, being 240 in the 242 class, but I weigh 230. For me to be in tip-top shape, I got to be 220, right? But, for certain events coming up, I'll probably drop 10 more pounds, depending on what it is. But, 230 is fine. I'd rather not be 230. It gets to a point, and you and I talked about this earlier this week, Paul, when you got kids, right? And I'll be 46 in a few months. And, from a health standpoint overall, do I really want to be carrying that much weight that's necessary? I really don't. So it's like making that choice now, I'm going to go ahead and finish my, commitments, which is in 2 weeks, Washington State. And then after that, I'm doing a whole, back to the drawing board, back to the blueprints, recalculate the year in review. And this is what I do. Year in review. How was my year? How did I, feel being this weight, that weight? Okay, I felt okay here. There were certain tournaments where I was in the same weight and I felt like I didn't belong there. So now it's just time to go ahead and recalibrate that, drop down a notch, and just see what happens there. So that's what I do. I'm not sure what you do. Hey, and Carl just said his goal weight is 250. So there you go. It's one of those deals. You know what I mean?
I do. When I pull 242, I walk around about 250 or so, because it's pretty easy to do a 1 week water cut and make it to 242. Yeah. And then put the weight back on, especially if it's the night before weigh-ins. I can lose 10 pounds of water in a week and put it all just about, all back on by, the time I'm pulling the next day. So that was one advantage I had when I was pulling 242 class was the ability to come in as a really big 242. Whereas when I'm pulling supers, I'm on the other end of the spectrum. I'm really a tiny super heavyweight compared to, the Wayne Withers, the BJ Fakakis, the Corey West. There's some absolutely gigantic men in that class that just the skeletal structure of the frame, you're giving up a lot of leverage and everything right off the bat. So, I feel like why not be at the top of the size list of my class versus the very bottom? I'm banging with guys, Corey West, he probably outweighed me over 150 pounds when we pulled. He's a good bit taller. I don't know if you've seen him in real life or not, but he's just a gigantic human, just a monster of a man. Sean Latimer also, he's just a monster. And you're giving up a lot with guys like that. Extremely powerful. There's a reason there's weight classes,
Yes.
You get similar skill levels. You just got a much larger man. It's hard to beat them.
Well, yeah. When you got that big a frame, take Sean Latimer and Corey West. Their frame is more wide, so they can put on the extra pounds, and their shoulders look like they got built-in football shoulder pads on them. Where you take a Wayne Withers, where he's about what? He's all at 6'6", 6'7", got that long forearm, and it's like, what the fuck, So, here I am. I'm 5'11", and I'm like going, I know for a fact, just in a 242 class, probably not ideal for me to be there because my friend, I'm one of the smaller guys in that class, right? So I don't need to be in that class. I'm just there because, I can hang with the guys, being ranked 14th, left-handed. I can hang with them, but I really don't need to be in that class, right? And maybe you sat there and go, okay, here we go. When you pull the supers, that also means unlimited. So yeah, you're going to walk in there with a Wayne Withers and a Sean Latimer and a Corey West, where their frame is bigger, their hands are probably bigger, arms are longer, and you got to go, I got to deal with this. So yeah, I mean, sometimes we all got to kind of sit back and do that. But my next question for you is, what's your opinions about everybody just packing on the weight? Like now, ever since Devin beat Michael at the King of the Table 1, and Devin ballooned up to 290, give or take, whatever the hell it was, and everyone's like, oh, that's the key. That's the secret. I got to be bigger. Here I am. What's your thoughts on everyone trying, not everyone, but the majority of the arm wrestling world trying to be as big as they can be? What's your thoughts on that?
To me, it isn't the bigger they are, the harder they fall. To me, it's the bigger they are, the harder they hit. And I'm on it, and that's the truth, really. You get, Michael Todd was bigger than Devin when he beat Devin.
Mm-hmm.
I happened to have the privilege of witnessing that amazing match live in person. Great match. It's a great fight. Both of them are true warriors. Then Devin, we'll just say level the playing field all around.
Mm-hmm.
And came in, and with a level playing field, he ended up being bigger. He's got a bigger frame. He's taller. He's a bigger man, right?
Yeah.
And so he maxed out his frame. I don't think he would hold much more than he put on. I think him and Michael both, I think when they met the first time, well, not the first time, because they've been rivals for years, but at Wall Finals, what was it, 2017, I believe?
Yeah.
When they met in that one, Michael was bigger than he is now by a little bit. I think, he's running around closer in the 280s, and now he's maybe in the 260s or 70s. But he was a good bit bigger than Devin. I want to say Devin was probably in the 240s or so.
Right.
And in my mind, I'm not so sure, what supplements Devin was on, if any, at that period in time. So anyway, he got considerably larger for the match when they pulled Michael, and I believe all things being even, he was able to beat him with just a much larger frame.
Well,
everybody maxing it out. That's kind of what it's come to in supers. That's one reason being in a smaller weight class, you're kind of limited to what what you're going to be up against because there's a weight cap. But in supers is the one class where you can just get to be the absolute monster, and it's going to help you.
Right.
Just the bigger man, the bigger, heavier, stronger man, no matter what means they took to get there, is going to win. LeVon, prime example. You know, he's an absolute. If you look at pictures of him over the last 10 or 15 years, he is a different human.
Oh yeah,
and he's about unstoppable. You know, I'd be interested in seeing, you know, this large version of Devin pull him, but I still don't think anybody can touch LeVon right now. I think LeVon's probably going to be going down the road Saplinkoff went down.
Yeah.
You can only maintain that type of, you know, everything he's doing for so long before you start having health problems.
Unless you're like, you know, LeVon and Dennis, where they like pull once every 2 years, you know, because you can't be on that stuff year round. But I will say this, and I say that because Devin got the 290 because he had to beat Michael, right? Or you can go down a couple weights and go, hey, Paul Lynn had to weigh 230 just to compete with Brzezinski, where Paul Lynn walks around 210, 212, give or take. He had to bulk up to, he even said himself, he had to bulk up to 230 just to compete, you know, with John Brzezinski. And so this, you know, playing this big game. I mean, I'll give you another example. When Ryan Bowen pulled Lachlan Adair in their little fiasco match, where was Ryan Bowen? Round 230. You know, he had nothing for Lachlan. So now Ryan's like, fuck this. I'm going back to the 95 kilo class. So, you know, when you look around the wrestling world, arm wrestling world, and you got to sit there and go, okay, what are these three examples telling everybody here that, oh, I got it bigger is better. I gotta bulk up. I gotta do all this. I gotta do all that. And what happens is that when you do that and it doesn't work, Ryan Bowen, no, I'm going back to 95 kilo class. Paul Lynn, yeah, that made me sick. I didn't feel good. I didn't feel like an athlete. He's going back to where he was. Devin, he's one of those guys that can probably put on the weight, but you know, he knew that, okay, now I get to have this, you know, boxing match. He had to drop all that weight because there was no way he's going to fight in that boxing match weighing 290. So again, after that one match, these guys went back down in weight. So it makes me wonder, was it worth it to do all that in the first place? You know, for some, maybe. For others, it wasn't so good. So, you know, that's why it begs the different. I'm hoping that, and like I said, the guys in Europe, they play by a different set of rules because we could talk about, remember when Truman beat John Brzezinski 6-0 in one of those arm fight deals? Do you remember that?
Yes.
And Truman was all of 210 pounds. And now it seemed, and then he ended up beating Michael Todd, thinking, okay. And now it's like, what, 4 years ago? And he was like the flavor of the month. Well, guess what? Now he thought in his mind, bigger is better. I got to get bigger. And now he's constantly having injuries. He's constantly not as crisp as he was when you put all that weight on. You know, it's like going, you kidding me? Look at Gasparini. When Gasparini pulled Michael Todd in a super match when Todd went to Italy, and Todd ended up winning 4-2, but the two wins that Gasparini got were actual, you know, I think they were elbow fouls or whatever, but he was hanging with him. Now all of a sudden he's getting bigger and bigger. And it's like, okay, I got to be big as I can. And then you got to realize, no, you're not as good as you are when you're that big, because now you got big Alex Kardecka just fucking put the boots to him and took him to the woodshed. Like, dude, you are not that big. You should not be that big. No disrespect, but those guys need to stay in their lanes. Like, dude, why get that big for what? I don't understand that kind of stuff, because just take a look back. All those guys getting all hefty and stuff, they don't do as well because that's not their body frame. As you said, that's not their actual weight. And I hope that people don't take that and just go off the train and go off the rails with that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. You know, I mean, no disrespect by anything I've said, but, you know, we're all pretty intelligent people here, and without going too far down the rabbit hole, I think a lot of us understand what's going on. And, you know, I think it's just part of the sport we're in right now. And, you know, the size game, you know, I had the pleasure of meeting Hermes at Wall 505. He pulled Matt that same day, and I pulled Corey. And we were all around doing some after pulling together. Hermes was very selective on who he was after pulling with, and plus after pulling is just after pulling. But
right.
He's actually a much smaller guy than me, frame wise. He's not a very large man at all. So I don't know why somebody with a smaller frame than me would want to try to play a size game with a monster like Khadija. That man he's a naturally large, gigantic Viking bloodline guy. He just has those giant genetics, and I don't know why you want to try to play the size game with somebody who has such an advantage on you.
Yeah, it's one thing if you're Derek Smith, who was 6'8", 365 pounds. I get that. Totally get that. His body frame can hold all that weight. But when you're Hermes Gasparini, it's like going, dude, seriously? Even when Todd Hutchings was dominating his weight class in wall, and they're like, dude, it doesn't make things fun anymore. Go up there and see what you can do with the supers. And then Todd was probably about 210, maybe 215, I guess, give or take.
Like they killed him one time. He wasn't in hospital a week.
Yeah. Then when you got to pull the Jerry Cadorette and the Matt Maskell of the world, where their body frame is already big to begin with, and now he has to gain all that weight to pull Devin Laird and those guys. It's like going, do you really need to do that? But be that as it may, if he did it and he got something out of it, then cool. I'm not saying he can't, but I'm not sure how much he weighed when he pulled Corey, but it seemed like it didn't affect him that much because, the first match, Corey blasted right through him, and, being the tables savvy that, Todd is. And here's the funny part, because Todd Zilla made adjustments, and he doesn't really do a whole lot of table time. It's all weights and stuff, and he does table time maybe once a month, give or take. But for him to make that adjustment, he just tells him, hey, I've been around the block before. I pulled the big names over across the pond in, Europe and stuff like that, but I don't think he was that big when he pulled Corey West. But it just makes me wonder, I'm like, why would someone get that? I mean, if you want to get big, fine, but then to make sure that they got to realize that puts a lot of stress on your heart, so.
A lot. I kind of predicted what was going to happen with Todd Hutchings and Corey. Todd Hutchings is the gentleman that I kind of emulated in every way possible to become good at arm wrestling. I studied his style. I studied his training, his mentality, because, I was, growing up under Ron Bass.
Right.
I was trying to do what Ron does. And I wasn't having much success. I can't pull like Ron because we have a completely different frame. Ron's a good bit taller than me, longer arms, different, just all our leverages are different. And I was trying to be Ron, and it wasn't working for me. I can't pull like Ron. And then, I was kind of at a loss. And then I saw Ron have the match with Todd Hutchings. And then I said, I've met Todd. We're close to the same frame. I might be a little taller, but we're real close.
Right.
And there is a man that is pulling at an extremely high level with a similar frame to me, similar height, similar arm length, similar hand size, everything, real close. And I was like, maybe I need to study him. He's got a similar frame to me. I need to set up the way he does, pull from the same angles, train the way he does. And when I changed my mentality of who I was trying to emulate to someone with a more similar frame, it paid dividends.
Yes.
I tried to be Todd. So with that said, when I saw how my match went with Corey, we pulled similar angles, similar frame, and all that kind of stuff, just because I emulated Hutchings.
Right.
That I think that's a bad angle for Corey. I think there's a little bit of a bad angle, a way maybe me and Todd are put together from a shorter stature, pulling from without heavy side pressure. That's maybe a weakness for Corey. Because Corey's a grizzly bear, and he's not going to be afraid to go in there from that angle. But I believe there was an advantage there somewhere for me and Todd. We both actually had to make adjustments. If you remember, Corey beat me the first match too.
Mm-hmm.
It was actually an extremely similar match, and me and Todd were extremely similar pullers because I emulated him. He's one of the best to ever do it, and I wanted to be great too, so I emulated someone with a similar stature and structure.
I tell you what, there's a comment in the chat right now that is T-shirt worthy. Okay, Chuck Bartle, thank you very much. He states, "Big isn't strong, strong is strong." End of.
Right.
You know, and like I said, that's probably T-shirt worthy because you don't have to be the biggest to be the strongest. I mean, what we just talked about now with Todzilla, he ain't the biggest guy there, but he could take down the big boys, which tells you, hey, strong is strong, you know? Bottom line.
You know, Corey West is considerably larger than both of us. And we both stood toe to toe with that monster of a man. And
Right.
you can't say he's not strong, but we both stood toe to toe with a much smaller frame and considerable massive weight disadvantage. And both of us stood toe to toe with him and got a win on him head to head that you can't refute. And they were both power matches too.
Take John Brzezinski, 2008, 2009, when he pulled Saplinkoff and Nemiroff. We all knew Dennis, I mean, the size of his hands in doubled the size, weight, and all that kind of stuff, and John still took him down. Strong is strong. End of.
Yeah, only strong. That is T-shirt worthy.
He took down Cleve Dean. Now, maybe Cleve Dean wasn't the top of his game, but Cleve Dean was a big dude. I mean, a humongous hand. So this is how smart John is, right? He knew that I'm not going to attack Cleve's hand because that's not going to work in my favor. So I'm going to attack something else. I'm going to turn him in. I'm going to attack his arm, see what happens. So again, you know, knowing that there was no way John was going to out wrestle Cleve hand strength size, says, okay, I'm going to go the opposite way. I'm going to go after something else. You know, there's no way I'm going to defeat this guy's hands. It's too big. It's too wide in girth, whatever. You know, strong is strong. Yes, Chuck Bartle.
You probably don't want to attack his hand. You know, I had pulled him in the past and he had beaten me. I've improved a lot and I got that super match at the Vendetta with him. And I kind of chopped, and he likes to hook. So I knew I would be able to go into a hook, but I wanted to kind of chop in on his wrist and get as close on the wrist and less hand involved and get into his arm.
Right.
And if you look at him, his whole arm is huge, though. It's not just his hand. His arm is bigger than most people's leg. So it was still, when you get into his arm, you still got problems. But I found that being a little more fightable than his hand. You know, trying to just go into, because when you grip up with him, have you ever gripped up with Jeff Dave?
Yeah, actually I did. And after pulling, it's almost like it's unfair. Like I sit there when I shake his hand, or, you know, I think I warmed him up at Worlds this year. And I'm like I'm saying in my mind, and by the way, Chuck Bartle says that comment came from Louis Simmons of the West Side Barbell, which is where Todd swears up and down is the deal. And it works for him. Jeff Dave, when I'm warming up with him, you know, you shake his hand and I sit there and go, how is anybody beating you? You know, like how? I don't understand. How are you losing? No, he's made some gains in the sport. Don't get me wrong, but how? Just how? Anybody with that hand, there's Oleg Zolk out of Ukraine with that big left arm, and then what's the dude in Germany with the right hand version of it? What's his name? Hellboy or whatever. You know, how are these guys losing? Like, what the hell's going on? You know.
Well, I do know one weakness. You know, Jeff Dave's a dear friend of mine, so I don't like to discuss weaknesses, but I really study my opponents and pick them apart. And just, I did notice a lack of supination. And I think that might be a problem with some of the people with the gigantic hand and arm combos. You may lose a little bit of supination and pronation. He's got a great ability to cup, but supinating and pronating doesn't seem to be something that's that easy. So I was able to kind of take advantage of the fact that, you know, he's going to dive in with a cup and he's going to have a lot of power. The worst way you would want to attack Jeff would be a hard back pressure, kind of type top roll.
Right.
Because he's got so much hand around the back of your hand. when you hit back, you're hitting straight. I mean, he's almost got his hand closed around yours. And also had the advantage of having pulled him before. If you've never gripped up with Jeff Dave and you walk up to the table, no matter how mentally prepared you think you are, when you grab his hand, it's still going to blow your mind.
Yeah.
You might even shake his right hand and think, they've got a pretty big hand, but that's whatever. But his left hand's considerably larger, and that's not the hand you shake. So when you grip up on the table, it's pretty insane. And also, I took a different training approach for 3 or 4 months where we pulled, where I normally train with, 2-inch almost everything on all my grips.
Yeah.
I went to 3-inch, maybe even 4-inch on some stuff, but primarily 3-inch on everything.
Was that for him though? Was that for him though, or just in general?
Just for him.
Okay.
In general, I stick to about 2-inch on 90% of my moves. I feel like that's the size that equates to more table strength.
Yeah.
Actual arm wrestling. No, I do some with different, the other 10%, I still do use other size handles some, but 90% of my training would be 2-inch everything. Whereas when I was training for Jeff, and I believe it helped me tremendously when I pulled Jeff, but then when I pulled the tournament afterwards, I believe it threw me off. And that wasn't something I'd thought about, but I trained so much 3-inch and getting ready for him, it made sense. But then when I pulled the tournament afterwards, everything else going back to normal felt a little awkward.
Well, yeah, because even
those specifically, that's another thing about pulling a super match and then pulling a tournament after.
Yeah. You
train so specifically for one individual. You hone in everything you do, and then you pull the tournament, and you have a bunch of different individuals that, it can often put you at a disadvantage.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. When I trained for Roger Learn, it was, him and him only. I tried hard not to go into a hook. There were times he put me in a hook, and there were times like, okay, I got to make sure, tighten up, lock that pronate in so he can't turn me into a hook. Then the tournament happened. It was like, oh, okay. So now you get different hand sizes, different pressures, it's like, oh, yeah, you're right. It kind of does throw you off because my mind going down to Kansas City was to go ahead and go, okay, this is how I'm going to beat Roger. This is my game plan going into it. If I don't win 3-0, I'm going to win it one way or the other. But then once you're done, okay, because the super matches always go first. Hey, now we're going to go ahead and get this tournament going. Now am I going, okay, here we go. And your first opponent's like, oh, wow, the hand might be a little smaller or the hand might be a little thicker. So it kind of throws you off a little bit. So I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah. Oh, and I wanted to congratulate you on that. That was a big win. Roger's a definite stud of an opponent, and I was excited to see the match. Either way, I think quite a bit of both y'all. But
thank you, appreciate it.
Impressive win on your part, for real. That was a good one. He's you knocked down a big one on that one. So congratulations to you on that.
I'm sure me and him are going to run it back. Once that video got posted by Joseph Jellick and stuff, and he shared it and I shared it, and I was like, you know what? I'm sure some day down the road we're going to have to run that one back. I'm sure I got to be in my, P's and Q's. I know for a fact he's going to come back with a vengeance if we ever get an opportunity to do that again. So,
yeah, he's young and he's hungry and he's got sky's the limit potential wise. He's training hard. So yeah, he's going to be one to watch. He's actually an individual that I'm keeping an eye on for my cut of 242. I'm excited about potentially running into him somewhere down the line.
Yeah, he's all a 245, give or take. Yeah, he's, and I'm telling you, he looks bigger in person than he does in his pictures, by the way, because he just did a side-by-side of what he does now as he was 3 years ago. And you can tell he's put in the work. I mean, his biceps are like, what the fuck? And so you got to realize, like, I going into that match with him, arms were bigger. He's all just the inside guy. He's a powerhouse. So when I stood next to him, we're taking pictures. We actually sat at the same table. It was funny because that event, it was me and Tim Talmadge, Roger Learn, his wife, Cody Merritt, and his wife. We all sat at one table. It's not too often the two people who are actually opponents in the super match sit at the same table. But that's how cool me and him are. That's how much respect, like you and Carl, That's how much respect Roger and I have for one another, even though we live on the opposite ends of the country. But my point being is that, when I stand next to him, he kind of dwarfs me because the shoulders are so wide and width. It's like going, dude, and it's like, I don't know, man. Even some of the guys kind of whispered to me in my ear. I was like going, hey, man, you sure you're ready for him? I was like, I ain't got no choice now, because you see some people. I already met Roger earlier in the year, but it seemed like he got bigger since March. That's when I met him the first time. And that's how this whole thing started, But it seemed like he got bigger. I'm like going, damn. And up until that point, he was gaining momentum. He was going to tournaments and super matches, winning overalls. That fan. I'm thinking, okay, here we are, and I'm thinking, damn, did I bite off more than I can chew? Maybe, maybe not. But I'm gonna give it hell and see what happens. So, fortunate for me, I ended up on the winning side, 3-2. Yeah, I'm sure we'll have to run that back one of these days. But again, it's just one of those deals where it's like, okay, gotta have a game plan. There is no way I'm gonna go right into his arm. That's just not gonna happen. Not gonna happen.
Well, just like we were just talking about, and Chuck Bardo said, and that's another good point, another good illustration of the fact: bigger and stronger.
Exactly. Somebody make that T-shirt.
Overcome a size disadvantage with use different leverage tools, and overall come out on top. And that's something I guess we both have a little experience in, is overcoming a larger, physically stronger opponent with a little bit of technique and forethought and studying them.
Nice.
But yeah, it's pretty cool being friends with an opponent. A lot of the times I have a super match. I walk in, I see them across the room. We kind of give a little nod, but we avoid each other pretty well until the tournament, and then end up talking when it's over, usually becoming pretty good friends. But with Carl, walked in, hey man, how you doing? So we were all standing around and talking quite a bit before the tournament, just cutting up like old friends. It was set, but we both were able to turn it on pretty good when it came time. Me and Candy and Carl and Taylor all were hanging out quite a bit, sat together and everything before and after the match, and it was a lot of fun though. I really enjoyed the match. I'm in my element.
Yeah.
Some people don't enjoy a good fight. I like a dog fight. When I'm in the middle of a rough match that I'm having to max out on and I'm tired and I'm giving it all and I'm having to make adjustments and think and hold my arm and get my arm rubbed in between rounds, I'm in heaven. That's what I live for. If you're in a dog fight with me and you're not enjoying it and you're having a hard time, you're in trouble, because I really enjoy that. I like the gritty tooth and nail battles. The harder it is, the more I enjoy it.
And I'm going on 12 years in the sport, and at all the super matches I've had, that one with Roger is top. And I tell you why. And this ain't about me, blowing myself or anything like that, but it's best of 5, or race to 3, however you want to say it. But Roger and myself went the distance. Okay. So if you're a real fan of arm wrestling and you saw that match, or you've seen the video from Joseph Jellick, Natural Born Killers Arm Wrestling, by the way, if you need them, check it out on YouTube. If you see that match, it went the distance. He wins, right? Wins the first round. Now I have to readjust, right? I win the second match. Now he has to readjust. Wins. He's up 2-1. Now I have to make another adjustment. I win. We go 2-2. And then the final, I end up winning that one. But the fact that it went back and forth tells you right there, as an arm wrestling fan, like that's some good stuff there. It may look like it was the same in our wins, but it wasn't really, it wasn't really. So, looking back, kind of going, okay, this is what arm wrestling is all about, because if I did the same thing over and over, because I'm not a real advocate of hey, same thing, only harder. When someone takes out your fastball, you throw another one, they're like waiting for it, like do it again, see what happens. You have to come back with something different. Okay, you have to come back, even if you hook a guy, whether you have more pronation, more down pressure, whatever, top roll, more back pressure, more side pressure, whatever. You have to change your game. And that's what Roger did. That's what I did. That's what made that match so awesome, in my opinion. I could be wrong, but the video speaks for itself. And there you have it. So, one more question, Paul. What does 2022 have in store for Paul Passmore starting in February with the Alabama State Championships?
I am going to go into Alabama. It'd be easy to get a big super match at 242, but I kind of want to get into I want to test the water. So right. I want to just pull the tournament, and like we're talking about, I'm going into this training to pull a tournament and not training to pull one individual person.
Gotcha.
So my training will be a little bit more broad. My mentality, I'll be studying different people that I expect to be there at that weight. And so my performance when I go after just the tournament and I train for a tournament is usually really high versus when I pull a super match and then just pull a tournament afterwards. The tournament ends up being an afterthought. The super match is the reason I was there.
Right.
So I'm going into that with the mentality I want to win 242s. I'm going to study every opponent that I think I could possibly run into, and there's going to be a great potential to jump into this class and get ranked really high really quick at that tournament.
Gotcha.
There's quite a few ranked people that could very well or should very well be there. I might, after that first tournament, be a top 5 242. Quite possible. I'll be studying everybody I think could be there. I have a solid game plan. I've seen some of my top opponents in rivals recently get some pretty big holes in their game exposed.
Right.
I think Pablo did a great job of exposing a few of Jerome's weaknesses, and that's something that Jerome is actually a dear friend of mine. You can see me kind of cornering him in between rounds some when he's pulling Pablo.
Yeah.
But I didn't realize some of the things that Pablo had picked up on him. So, if we meet at 242, he's going to need to have an answer for what Pablo did, because he's going to be facing a similar situation with me when we pull. And that's just one example. That's just the way I watch matches. I see something exposed on somebody and we pull later, that's going to be up in my data bank. And they may very well see it again. And if they haven't made the proper adjustment, that's going to be even more trouble for them. So I'll start out there, see how it goes. I may get ranked, but by the end of the year, and here's another point I wanted to make. It's super heavyweight. Left arm, my right arm is still a work in progress, but it's coming along very well. I may be back somewhere during this year, especially pulling smaller guys. I've had to learn to be a lot more versatile with my approach. I've developed a tremendous amount more pronation in both of my arms.
Right.
And that was the new thing that I brought to the match with Carl. Nobody knows. People don't know me as a top roller, but I was actually able to use that when I pulled Carl. That was my secret weapon. Nobody was expecting. When I won both arms in Dahlonega, I won first place in a pro open tournament in Dahlonega a month before that, right-handed for the first time since the break, and it was several really good pullers. I top rolled all of them.
Nice.
So I've trained really hard to become a more versatile puller and add a solid top roll, and now I have that. So, and I still have the same hooking strength I always had, but now my pronation is up there with that. So it's and I'm the break made me a smarter puller, and it forced me to become more versatile.
Gotcha.
So I plan on being ranked very high, possibly top 5, if not higher, both arms by the end of 2022. And at the end of the year, I'm going to reevaluate, see how 242 went. But I'm committing 100% to 242 for the year of 2022, and then I'll reevaluate at the end of the year. The top of the ladder left, Cody Merritt for supers, is not very attainable. I had an opportunity to pull him. He's just kind of in a place of his own. But I do feel at the top of the ladder left at 242 with Marcio is slightly more attainable. I believe that is a possibility. I don't feel that Cody is after having pulled him.
Yeah.
I've never had the opportunity to pull Marcio, but he looks a little slightly more human than Cody does. So there may be a way I can get in there and possibly be the top guy left-handed at 242. So that's my goal. I think it's attainable, and that's where I'm gonna be shooting for this year at 242. Instead of being a really good top contender in supers, I want to be the man at 242.
Well, I'll tell you what, guess who also thinks you might be the man at 242? Wayne Withers just chimed in. He goes, hey, Paul is taking the 242 at Bama State. What's up, everybody? And I might add, Mr. Wayne Withers, you don't have to take my word for it, but Paul Passmore and myself got a message for you. December 11th, you're about 2 weeks away, my friend. One of the biggest matches of your career when you pull Marcio Barboza. And I'm going to tell you right now, do not go into his hook. Do not go arm to arm with him. You got a big hand. Your hand is significantly bigger than his. You control that hand, and you load up top. If you want to win this match, if you're going to beat Marcio, do not. If he turns you in, you might need to bring a lunch. But if you control at the center, right? Control that hand, control that hit, and use that long lever of yours and bring him this way, things might go in your favor. That's just my opinion. You don't have to take my word for it. But since Wayne's on the show watching in the chat, Passmore, what do you think?
Yeah, Wayne is also a very dear friend of mine, and I've got a tremendous amount of respect for him. And when people talk about the match, a lot of people I spoke to are like, Marcio is going to run away with this one. I'm like, no. I give it about a 50-50. I've pulled Wayne quite a bit. He's a monster. He is if you haven't met him, he's an extremely large man. Big hand, long armed, and he's been pulling forever. He's very smart. He knows what he's doing at the table. I think he has a very solid chance at coming out on top of this one. I really do. And your advice to him was spot on. Use your natural size advantage, lever advantage, hand size. Stay up top with him. I would say pull him. He's a similar stature to me. Short, or not really short, but 6 footer, and really strong. But I think Wayne, if you pull him like you pull me, I think you'll come out on top. I think he's going to be similar in a lot of ways. He's not going to be able to stop that high top roll that you do. It's extremely hard for me, just because with the arm length, he's going to be a similar arm length to me and everything like that too. And it's just hard to get in there and block that. And
right.
If you fight off hard and go in there real aggressive and do your thing, I think you might be able to, just like before me and Wayne pulled Matt Mask, we shook hands that day in the back, and I was like, me and you both fixing to shot the world today. He goes, absolutely. And then we went out there and shot the world. Nobody thought there was a chance, and it's no man's chance in hell that either one of us would beat Matt Mask, and both of us, beat him 3-0. So I think that this is Wayne's opportunity to shot the world again. I will go on record and say I predict Wayne beating Marcio.
Give him some love, guys, because I messed around with Wayne after pull. Wayne, you remember Waxahachie? After the weekend of the ROTM, and we're in Big Al Sports Club. This was after the weirdo camera guy, and we're doing some after pulling, and so we're on the table. And I'm thinking, fuck, man, I got this long lever. I'm thinking, all right, let me see if I can do something. His wrist was solid. Here's Wayne, just as tall as can be, had his beanie on, had his chain around his neck, and he's locked and loaded. I'm like, there was nothing I can do at all. And I pride myself in trying to take my opponent's hand, and I couldn't budge it. And that was it. And I'm thinking, okay, this guy's going to win the ROTM the next day. And that was my, initial thought. And I'm telling you, Wayne, Marcial's explosive. So you cannot be sleeping, by the way, because I'm telling you right now, he's coming with everything. So do not go inside if you can help it. Lock everything up top, be a table boss. Make sure you lock that fucking pronator right here, so that way he can't turn you inside, because your wrist is solid. One thing I will say, man, believe in your abilities, man. Not that you say you don't, but when you start to go against bigger names, okay, don't, shy away from your game plan. Lock that sumbitch up here, get in it. Like I said, slide the elbow a little bit forward, Because if you do, your hand gets a little, or your hand and arm gets a little bit longer, it makes it more difficult for him. I'm just saying. Like I said, you ain't got to take my word for it. That's just my opinion, seeing how both you guys pull. So that'd be my, advice to you. So there you go. Hey, my friend.
To impose your will and do what you do best to your opponents. And if they can stop that, have a good backup plan. But you go in there and do what you do.
Yeah.
And use that against them first. Do you. Do Wayne, do Jody, do whatever you do against them best. If they're able to stop your best, have a backup plan. But you go impose your will. And if they can't stop it, beat them 3-0 with that until they can find a way around it. It's like when me and Carl were pulling, I got 2 up on him, and he found a way to stop what I was doing, so then I had to adjust.
There you go. Exactly. Yeah. That's what it's like a pitcher in baseball. If all you got is a fastball and they get a hold of that, you might as well forget it, man. You better have a changeup, breaking, curve, whatever. You got to have tools. And I'm sure that these guys are going to bring everything on a kitchen sink in 2 weeks, the same weekend as Brezink and Larrett, the same week as the 8-man round robin in Washington State, because we're going to have a lot of people there. Don't forget, I'm going to promote the hell out of this shit too, because first and foremost, I'm smacking Jeff Frank. Love the guy, but, man, you're coming from Canada and you're crossing the border into no man's land. When you're coming to the Pacific Northwest, that's my region. So I'm going to take care of him left-handed. I got the 8-man round robin right-handed. You got Brendan Elsesser and Andre Sharkovic, right-handed super match, and those same 2 people are going to be in the left-hand round robin with Jacob Abbott and Jordan Sill. I'm telling you, that match is just off the hook. Not to mention, we still got Aaron Yearsley, Tim Talmadge. You got BJ Frakakis and Devin Mackin. So I'm telling you right now, in 2 weeks, this country might implode about all what's going on, okay? You got to be somewhere that day, because I'm telling you right now, December 11th is the date. You got all that going on in Dubai, all that in Washington. You got Wayne Withers. You got Marcia Barboza. I'm telling you right now, that's going to be a weekend of all weekends. That, my friend, is how you put a bow tie on the year 2021. That's it. Know what I mean?
Amen.
So, Paul, we've been on here for about an hour, my friend. I got some honeydew lists to do. My wife is downstairs as we speak now playing Christmas music, which means she has a lot of work for me to do. So,
we're in the same boat.
So I got to go help her out right quick, but I'm going to do a few more things first. But I want to thank you for joining me the day after Thanksgiving. I hope everyone had a good holiday out there, and I hope you guys train well, okay? And Paul, my friend, thank you. We're going to have to do it again.
Absolutely, Jody. It was a pleasure.
All right, man. Tell Candy and the kids I said hi.
I will.
All right, have a good one, buddy.
All right. See you later. Bye.
All right, bye. So, Passmore, 242 class in 2022. Y'all better look out, because I'm telling you right now, it all starts with Alabama State. Taking place in February. I'm not sure the date yet, but I'll get that soon enough, okay? There'll be flyers coming out. Glenn Brooks may have some information on that, okay? So, again, we got 8 likes. That was bullshit. We need more likes in there, but it's all right, though. But I tell you what, I'm full of turkey, and I'm not going to stop now, all right? But thank you, everybody, for taking some time out today. When you put down the drumstick and all the turkey sandwiches and all the leftovers to chime in today with me and Paul Passmore. Thank you very much. I appreciate everybody chiming in. Chuck Bardo, Carl Stanley, Wayne Withers, and everybody else. Thank you for joining me on the show. I will see you next time, because the next time, later today, it's going to be story time, and I hope you chime in then. Troy Brown, there we go. Thank you. So guess what? As always, guys, see you when I see you. Y'all take care of yourselves. Eat more turkey.